This sample workshop will be on social emotional learning. In particular, understanding our own emotions as key for positive SEL programming. We're going to dive into what SEL is and important social factors into what hold us back from really attaining a high level of emotional intelligence, which is key for developing a positive and well-sustained SEL program. But for starters, let's talk about what is social emotional learning. And a quote from CASEL, or the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning, calls it social and emotional learning, or also known as SEL, is the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. And SEL has a very large impact on schools. And again, if you look towards the packet that comes with this workshop, there are many, many facts and explanatory things that will explain what SEL is and how it's broken down. But SEL and its impact on schools is very large, and it is essential to the whole school, whole child model, which City Year abides by, a holistic form of education that works on cultivating assets that the students already have. In primary school, developing their emotional intelligence so that they're not only prepared for better grades and moving on in grade level, but they're more prepared for life and relationships and conveying these emotions as a holistic form of education. It affects social, cognitive, and emotional development. And it has impressive results. Convincing empirical evidence indicates positive youth development in circumstances where SEL is implemented in an institutional and systemic way, even with other outside variables, such as socioeconomic issues. And there are 5 main keys that most who study SEL and its effects and successes, the 5 keys that really implement a solid SEL program. And what are those? Well, I've created 5 questions to go with each of the 5 key points to really help you understand what those key things are. So self-awareness. How can I identify my emotions, my thoughts, and behaviors? Self-management. How can I motivate myself while understanding my emotions? Social awareness. How can I show empathy for others, even those whose experiences I may not understand? Relationship skills. How well do I work with others, even in high-pressure situations? Responsible decision-making. How do I consider the well-being of myself and others and understand the consequences of my own actions? These 5 key points will help develop a fundamentally sound and institutional and systemic SEL program that can really affect change throughout a student and a student population's life. The educator's role in SEL, and that's an important thing to understand as well. An important quote by Laura Martinez talks about the emotions of the teachers and why it's important for the teachers' emotions to be in a high level of emotional intelligence so that the SEL program has a solid foundation. And emotions are at the heart of what teachers, and by association tutors, mentors, and all involved in a child's development do and why they do it. Educators come into teachings with dreams of changing the odds for disadvantaged children, inspiring a love for learning, or developing critical thinkers. Unfortunately, research shows that 40 to 50% of teachers will leave the classroom within their first 5 years. And we have to think about why this is true. Well, we have to think first of the keys of emotional intelligence. And what is emotional intelligence? In order for an educator to maintain a relative state of well-being, one needs a high level of this emotional intelligence, which Friedman explains as emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive emotions, to access and generate emotions so as to assist thought, to understand emotions and emotional knowledge, and to reflectively regulate emotions as to promote emotional and intellectual growth. Our emotional intelligence is pivotal in the SEL model of education. Now, why is it so pivotal? An educator's emotions are modeled from our students. The way we respond to frustrating situations, the way we react in high-pressure situations, the way we react in class management, whether as a tutor, a mentor, or any other state in a student's life, the students will model the adult mentors in their life. They will model how they respond to high pressure and high tension situations, what emotions they use, how they respond to these situations. Especially in these early developmental primary years, it is fundamental that an educator has a high level of emotional intelligence. Educators who maintain a positive, content attitude impact the holistic education of a student. And it also prevents burning out. Many of us may have heard of this burning out from educators or somebody else in the field as a strong feeling of not wanting to do this anymore, not be a teacher, an educator, or mentor because of many factors, being stressed, many outside factors, maybe not being supported by administration, or things that are just not in control, like a particularly not well-behaved class. And these things affect the emotional intelligence of an educator to push them past the point of even wanting to do this anymore. Now, how do we build on our emotional intelligence so that maybe we can prevent these factors from happening? And what's holding us back? So we're going to work on the next worksheet, the first worksheet. Worksheet number 1 is going to help us name our emotions and how we deal with certain situations. So taking about a minute of time and pausing the video after I'm done with the instructions, take time to simply answer these questions on, again, worksheet 1, with maybe one to maybe a sentence worth of stuff to just really understand what your emotions are, how you respond in certain situations, how you deal with high stress and high tension situations. It's good to know what emotions are you're going through in a particularly stressful week to see where your emotional intelligence stands at. So take that time now. Now we're going to go on to the second part of the workshop and understand things that are holding us back from a high level of emotional intelligence. What will those things be? What's holding us back, per se? Many assume that they will have a generally high emotional intelligence level. Many think that they have grasp on what their emotions are, what key emotions you have, what you're going through in life. But there are some social things that are holding us back that we may not even know exist. With these levels vary on a plethora of circumstances, there are social constructs that deeply inhibit our understanding of emotions. And this workshop will particularly focus on gender and its influence on our daily lives. And particularly, gender roles and the process of conditioning. Now, what are gender roles? Gender roles are things we learn as children of what an appropriate thing that a boy should do or an appropriate thing a girl should do. And these simplistic things are buried into our subconscious. When I say, what color is associated with a boy? There's a color that comes to mind, blue. When I say, what color is associated with a girl? There are colors that come to mind, pink. That's the same for toys. What toys are associated with a boy? What toys are associated with a girl? Now, these may seem minuscule, but when we talk about emotional development, there are these social pressures that inhibit emotional intelligence, growth, and development through these same factors. Planned Parenthood says by the age of 3, children have usually developed to prefer toys or clothes that are appropriate for their gender. Now we're going to see how emotions affect us. In particular, taking a look at a particular gendered view on how we view emotions. This next worksheet is a little more complicated, so take a little more time to do it. You're going to be critically thinking and analyzing your own gender and how you feel that affects your responses and emotional levels, and how that affects your emotional responses to students. So take time to answer that worksheet to the best of your ability now. Now, what can these gender roles do to us? Well, the one thing I would really like to mark down is that it inhibits an emotional intelligence growth. It inhibits your range of emotions, and it stifles emotional development. Those are keys in developing our own emotional intelligence. There may have been gendered emotions that you have saw through that worksheet. And these emotions that are kind of pushed down because of roles we were taught through a process of conditioning. This conditioning takes place over a lifetime. It can come from family, it can come from media, it can come from religion, it can come from friends. It can come from social media. Many different aspects really influence our ideals on gender. And like the Planned Parenthood quote said, that these ideas are ingrained so deeply that we really don't even have an understanding of them. Yet, but they are critically inflicting damage on our development of emotional intelligence. And it creates boxes of appropriate emotions, and it stops emotional growth. But what can we do to change this? There are simple ways to change this, and we will go on to it when we talk about our simple action plan. But first, let's understand our emotional role in this SEL program and why it's pivotal in understanding this emotional intelligence and things that are holding us back from a higher level of emotional intelligence. We experience emotions almost all the time, yet we rarely pause to reflect on what these emotions do to us, how we cope with them, and how they can affect our work as educators. Developing skills to increase our emotional intelligence can improve our relations with students, improve our well-being, and create a more positive learning environment. Now I'm going to show you a sample action plan created by Lori Martinez, the earlier educator, using the Emotional Intelligence Network. This action plan talks about ways to reflect on your own emotional intelligence using a 3-step process. I developed a 4th step to really understand the social issues that we talked about before with the previous worksheet. Now, what are these 3 steps that she uses from the Emotional Intelligence Network? The first one is to know yourself. Understand your strengths, weaknesses, and having a clarity in oneself to understand what you're feeling and why you do what you do in response. Choose oneself. Instead of falling into a conditioned or consistent patterns on how you react emotionally, respond to them. Acknowledge their presence and review why you are acting in such a way. Give yourself means putting vision into action and making sure you're doing things for a particular useful reason. The 4th step I've added to Martinez's ideal is understand yourself. Understand what societal roles you have attached to you and what they are doing to your emotional responses. Once you are aware of social pressures, you can know the impact of why you're responding in a certain way, and you may change your course of action. This is an ideal of an action plan, steps to take in order to build our own emotional intelligence. The next step is for you to develop an individualized action plan. Now, what does that entail? An individualized action plan we're going to write down into a notebook. 1, ways to develop our own emotional intelligence, ways to deal with our stresses, ways to name our emotions, and any other forms that could really build up our emotional intelligence. Now, how would this work? In our notebooks, we can prescribe that maybe every 2 weeks meeting with peers to discuss high points and low points, much like the first worksheet did, and ways you have dealt with them. Vocalizing our emotions is the key to developing our emotional intelligence so that we have an understanding of how we're vocalizing our emotions to the students. Another thing could be developing healthy ways to de-stress. These can be goal sheets that you can set out, whether that's to take a walk every other day, or to go to the gym, or to read, or to write. These healthy ways will really help us express our emotions and understand what we're going through. And these are things that we're relaying to the students as important, so it's important that we develop these skills as well. So that will conclude the workshop, and I hope this helped you better understand what emotional intelligence is, its effect on the SEL programming, and how we can use this at City Year to really influence our students into better states of mind. Thank you.